Hey guys, so we're moving on to the 7.2 lesson, which is very detailed and there is a lot to it. So make sure that you use these notes and your note packets to be able to do these activities, these questions on the ALEX practices. You really do need to use your notes for these, okay? So in your notes, you have the first one's talking about transforming a graph by reflecting. So when you're reflecting something, these notes up here are important. When you are reflecting something over the x-axis, then your equation is going to look like this. It's y equals negative f of x. And really what you're doing is you're multiplying all of the y coordinates by -1. That's what you're doing. So that means if your coordinate in this example here, if your coordinate is 2, 1 in your original graph, then your new plot point or your new ordered pair that you're going to plot is 2, -1 because I multiplied the 1 by a -1. Okay? Then if you are reflecting over the y-axis, your equation is going to look something like this. Y equals f of -x. And what that's telling you to do is that you multiply your x coordinates now by -1. Okay, so if you want to reflect over the y-axis, you have to multiply the x coordinates by -1. So if your original ordered pair is again 2, 1, then your new ordered pair for a reflection over the y-axis is -2, 1. So basically I multiplied the x coordinates by a -1. Okay? So when you are doing transforming of the graph, there are steps to follow. First, find the key coordinates that create that figure. That's the first step. Find those key coordinates. So basically find the ordered pairs, okay? Then you are going to transform using the rules above, using those rules for reflection, which are stated above right in this chart that we made. And then you are going to plot your new points. The third step is to plot the new points that you created. So first we are going to write down what our points are. So some of these might be easier than others because in this particular one, in the first example, notice that this is just a straight line. So we only have 2 points that we're going to work with here. The first point is at 0, -4, and the other endpoint is at 7, -4. Okay? Now that I wrote down the 2 points, now I'm going to do the transformation. Okay? So notice that they want us to graph y equals -f of x, which is a transformation or a reflection over the x-axis. So remember, that tells you to multiply the y's by -1, okay? So if I transform these two ordered pairs, I'm going to multiply the second number by -1. So I get 0, +4 for the first, and then I get 7, +4 for the second. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to plot my new points as my final step. So if I plot my new points on my graph, I've got 0, +4 right here, and 7, +4 right here. And there's your reflection over the x-axis. Notice that you can tell that it reflected over the x-axis. So in the second example, it's a little bit different because in the second example, I have 3 points because you have like an angled picture here. So there are my 3 points. So first we're going to write those down. The first point over to the left here is at -4, 1. The second point in the middle there is at 4, 5. And then the third point over to the side is at 7, 2. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the transformation that it asks us. So in this one, it says it wants the graph of y equals f of -x. This is on the inside, so that tells me that I am going to multiply the x coordinates, or the x's, by -1 this time. So let's look at what our transformation looks like. So if I multiply the first coordinate by -1, I've got +4, +1. And then if I multiply the first coordinate by -1 here, it's -4, +5. And then I multiply the first coordinate here by a -1, and it's -7, +2. So now what we're going to do is we're going to plot our new points. So if we plot our new points now, we've got 4, 1 is right here. -4 5 is right here, and negative 7, 2 is right here. So our new equation, or sorry, our new function, our new graph of a function is going to look something like this. So that's a reflection over the y-axis. Okay, so please make sure that you write down your points because that will help you here. All right, in the next one, we're going to talk about transforming the graph by shrinking or stretching, okay? So first we have what's called vertical stretching or shrinking. Your equation looks like this: y equals a, where a is a number, times f of x. So what you are doing here, since the a is on the outside, what you are doing is you are going to multiply the y coordinates by a. So if a is greater than 1, then it's a vertical stretch, and if a is less than 1 but greater than 0, then it's a vertical shrink. So basically what you're going to do is if your coordinates are 2, 1, like in my example, then you are going to multiply the y by the outside number, which in this case, in our example here, is 3. Y equals 3 f of x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 2, 1, and I'm going to multiply the y coordinate by 3. So my new equation becomes 2, 3, because 1 times 3 is 3. Okay? Now similar with the horizontal stretching or shrinking. Okay, this is important to remember to use this chart. We have, it looks like this: y equals f of ax, so there's a number on the inside of the parentheses. And now that one is the opposite, and you're actually, instead of going to multiply, you're actually going to divide the x coordinates by that number. So it's the complete opposite of the vertical stretching and shrinking. So notice in our example here, we have y equals f of 2x. So remember, that tells me that I'm going to divide the x coordinates by 2. Okay? So notice that my first x coordinate in my example here is 2, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. And then the y coordinate stays the same. So my new point here would be 1, 1. Okay? Again, we're going to follow the same exact steps that we just followed in the last one, except now we're going to use the rules for shrinking and stretching in order to plot these new points, or plot these new functions, okay? Transform these new functions. So let's look at the first one. This one only has 2 points. I'm going to plot my 2 points here, and I'm going to write them down below. So my first point is at 0, 0, and my second point is at 4, 4. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out how it wants me to transform this. So notice that it wants me to graph y equals 2 f of x. Remember, if the 2 is on the outside, then you're dealing with y coordinates. So this is telling me I need to multiply the y's by 2. So if I do that, the second number, I get 0 times 2 is just 0. So my point stays at 0, 0 here. And then I get 4 times 2, which is 8. So my new point is going to be 4, 8. So I plot a point at 0, 0. And then I plot a point at 4, 8. And then I draw my line. That is what that one looks like. Notice in my next example, I first have to write down my points, but do notice that what they want us to do now is they want us to divide the x's by 1/2. Because remember, it's the opposite, so you're going to divide the x's by 1/2. But you can't ever divide by, remember, you can't divide by a fraction. So this is the same thing as multiplying by the flip, which the flip of 1 over 2 is 2 over 1, which is just 2. So what we're really going to do here is we are going to multiply the x's by 2. Okay? So I'm going to identify my points first. So there's 3 of them for this one. So I have 1 point at 0, 0, another point at 2, negative 4, and another point at 4, negative 2. And now I'm going to convert these points based on what it tells me to do. So I'm going to multiply all the y coordinates by 2 based on this example. So if I do that, the first one just remains at 0, 0, because 0 times 2 is 0. The second one is 2 times 2 is 4. So it remains 4, negative 4, or it becomes 4, negative 4. And then this last one, 4 times 2 is 8, so it becomes 8, negative 2. And then I plot my new points. So I've got 0, 0. I've got 4, negative 4. And then I've got 8, negative 2. And if I do that, then that would be the horizontal stretch. And that would be how I would write my answer. Okay? So again, pay attention to the rules that are listed above on this and use your notes. Here is another set of notes where you're doing all sorts of transformations. So now what we're going to do is we're going to combine a bunch of things, okay? So when things are combined, when there's more than one thing to do in an equation, there's something, a plus or minus on the inside, there's a number on the outside, there's a plus or minus on the outside. This is the order that you have to do it in, okay? So these notes are very important because you can use these on the test and stuff if you need to, okay? But basically what you're doing when you're transforming is you're starting on the inside and working your way out. You always start on the inside, okay? So we're always going to start with the horizontal translation. So if you see that there is a plus c on the inside, then that's telling you to subtract c from the x-coordinates, because remember, it's opposite thinking. And if you see a minus c on the inside, then that's telling you to add c to the x-coordinates. So in your example here, we have y equals f of x minus 2. Remember, that's telling you to move right 2, which is adding 2 to the x. So 2 plus 2 is 4, and then the y-coordinate is 1. So my new coordinate is 4, 1. Okay? In the vertical stretching and shrinking, that part would come next. So if you see a number on the outside of the f of x, then you're going to do that part next. Okay? And remember, a number on the outside of the f of x, number a, is you're going to multiply the y coordinates by a. Okay? So in our example, we have y equals 3f of x, and we're going to multiply the y coordinates by 3. So our x coordinates remains 2, and 1 times 3 is 3. Okay? After you do the outside, if there's an outside, if there is an inside number that is with the parentheses, the horizontal stretching, then that is when you are going to divide the x coordinates by a. Okay? So in our example here, we have y equals f of 2x. So remember, divide the x coordinates by 2. And 2 divided by 2 here is 1. So my new point is 1, 1. Okay? Then you have reflections. The reflections are what you want to do next. So if you see a negative sign on the outside, that's a reflection over the x-axis. And that means that you are going to multiply the y coordinates by negative 1. So when I do that, my 2, 1 becomes 2, negative 1. Okay? And then a reflection over the y-axis is what you're going to do next. So if you see a negative sign on the inside of the parentheses, then that is telling you to multiply the x coordinates by negative 1. So if my coordinate is 2, 1, then it's going to become negative 2, 1. And then the last thing you are going to do with all these transformations is the vertical translation, which is if you have a plus or a minus something on the outside of your equation or your function. So if k is positive, then you are going to add it to the y coordinates. And if k is negative, then you're going to subtract it from the y coordinates because you're moving up and down. So in our example here, we have y equals f of x minus 4. So for this one, that is telling you that you're going to move down 4, if you recall that, which means you are going to minus 4 from the y coordinates. So my x remains 2, and 1 minus 4 is negative 3. And that would be the new point to plot. So remember to use this when you are working on your transformations in ALEKS. And here is the last couple examples where they combine transformations. And remember, you're always working from the inside out. So let's look at our first example. In our first example, if I work from the inside out, we have a plus 3. Remember, a plus 3 is the same thing as moving left 3. It's also the same thing as subtracting 3 from the x's. Okay, so that's one thing that we have to do. Also notice that we have a negative sign on the outside of this function here. And the negative sign on the outside is a reflection. So remember that that is telling you to multiply the y coordinates. So multiply the y's by -1. Okay? So those are the two things that we need to do to our ordered pairs after we write them. Okay? So first, let's write our ordered pairs for the first equation. If I write the ordered pairs for the first equation, I'm going to have 3 of them because there's 3 points for this graph. Okay? So my first one is at -2, 4. My second one is at 0, 0. And my third one is at 4, 2. Okay? Now I'm going to do both of the transformations that I said. First, I'm going to subtract 3 from the x's, and then I'm going to multiply the y's by -1. So first, let's subtract 3. If we subtract 3 from the x's, we get -2 minus 3 is -5, 4. 0 minus 3 is -3, 0. And 4 minus 3 is 1, 2. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the second part, and I'm going to transform these new ordered pairs that I just created, and I'm going to transform them using the reflection, and I'm going to multiply those y's by -1. Okay? So if I do that, it becomes -5. -4 times 4 times -1 is -4. And then -3, 0 times -1 is just 0. And then 1 and 2 times -1 is -2. So our final plotting points are these in blue because those are the final transformations here. So I'm going to plot those points and connect them and then be done with that first graph. So the first one is -5, -4, which is right here. -3, 0, which is right here. And 1, -2, which is right here. So notice how it reflected and it also moved. Okay, so take your time with this again. So let's look at the next one. Let's look at what we have to do for a transformation first. First, if we're working inside out, we have a 2 on the inside. Remember, if you have a 2 on the inside, then that is telling you to divide the x's by 2. That's what that's telling you to do. Okay, divide the x's by that number. And then in the second part, we have a -4 on the outside. And remember, a -4 on the outside tells you to move down 4, or you could say that it's telling you to subtract, in other words, move down, subtract 4 from the y's. Okay, that's what the second part is telling you to do. So now let's write down our coordinates like we did for the last one of our 3 points here, and then we'll write down the transformations for each. So our 3 points are right here. Those 3 points, if I write them down here, are -4, 0, -2, -4, and 0, 0. All right, so now let's do our transformation. So the first transformation was to divide the x's by 2. So I'm going to take all of my x's, divide by 2. So -4 divided by 2 is -2, 0. -2 divided by 2 is -1, -4. And 0 divided by 2 is just 0. So 0, 0. Then the next transformation, if I look back up in my paper, tells us to subtract 4 from the y's. So if I do that, I now get 0. So I have -2, and then 0 minus 4 is -4. Then I have -1. -4 minus 4 is -8. And then I have 0, and 0 minus 4 is -4. So our 3 final points are written in blue here, and we're going to plot them on our graph. So -2, -4 is right here. Whoops. -2, -4. So we have 1 dot right there. -1, -8 is right here. And 0, -4 is right here. So it should look something like this. Okay? So hopefully that helps you guys. Make sure you totally use the notes for all of these, okay? And you can use them on the test as well, because this takes a lot of practice and a lot of writing down the ordered pairs and then figuring out what you're going to translate with. So take your time with this. And as always, let me know if you have any questions. Good luck.